Findings from the recent Royal Commission into Banking found evidence of rigged interest rates, bad financial advice, profits ahead of people and money laundering. Angela brings you the story.
Well, in the 1936 Royal Commission, which was called because we were going through the Great Depression and Commonwealth Bank was interfered with by the London banks, in particular the private Bank of England, they basically infiltrated the bank with their own people, the bank board. By the peak of the Great Depression, Australia had a huge debt to London banks. The debt of the states by themselves, it's not counting Commonwealth debt, was £700 million, which I would estimate in today's money is about probably $700 billion. And currently our debt is over $500 billion. That's just government debt, not counting private debt. The government in the 20s, it tried to inject £18 million into the economy, but the Commonwealth Bank, which was already infiltrated by the Bank of England, refused to follow the orders of the government. So circumstances got worse, and the Bank of England demanded that the Australian government cut its budget by 25%, which is no surprise that it generated an unemployment rate in the early 30s of over 30%. Now, in that Royal Commission, the 1936 Napier Royal Commission, Justice Napier made some very interesting findings, but two of them in particular, which are buried in the middle of all the findings, were interesting, especially from the fact that they haven't ever been implemented, they've just been hidden away, and if they had been implemented, it would result in economic prosperity for Australia. The Commission's report, paragraphs 503 and 504, 503 says that the Central Bank of Australia is the Commonwealth Bank and that every obligation undertaken by the Commonwealth Bank is backed by the power of creating the money with which to discharge that obligation. 504 basically says because of that power, the Commonwealth Bank can lend to the government or to others in a variety of ways, and it can even make money available to governments or to others free of charge. Now that's a hugely significant statement to make. Because it's not been implemented and it's just been hidden, banks obviously don't like people to know this information. We've floundered, lurched from recession to recession, if you like. Some economists are saying that we're due for a worse depression than the Great Depression. It's just that there have been various levers pressed and various factors like the mining booms and what have you that have delayed that occurring. It's like the false wave before a tsunami. The water pulls out and then there's calm and then suddenly the tsunami comes in. Well, you'll notice that there's common practice for people. If you go to the supermarket, you'll see people pulling out their card, and quite often it's credit. And you hear stories in the media about people tying themselves over with credit rather than having the money to pay for stuff. With the credit expansion of credit, it's sort of resulted in a false sense of security economically. Without that, we'd already be falling over. Credit crunch is basically around the corner. The predictions are quite dire. How it actually transpires is a bit hard to sort of predict because we're in sort of slightly new territory. One thing that the Royal Commission didn't investigate was this practice of securitisation. Securitisation is a practice that's evolved since the 70s in the US. The US government started that off, and it's only just got more complicated and convoluted over time. People think that banks loan other depositors money, but today banks even admit that that's not what they do, but they still say they loan money. Now, with a mortgage, the bank provides a loan account and takes mortgage over a property. Now, with securitisation, they take those mortgages and they bundle them together, chop them all up and put them in different layers called tranches and create bonds which they sell to investors. And what that does, it allows the bank to take the mortgage off its books, so therefore the bank doesn't have any risk involved anymore. But then they go and foreclose on people and claim that they've made a loss, which is not really telling the truth. That's one thing that the Banking Royal Commission should have looked at, because many commentators have said that securitisation is actually illegal for a variety of reasons. It involves fraud. It was sort of a compromise between not doing a Royal Commission and doing a full-blown Royal Commission like the 1936 one. So it was enough to placate people, and a lot of people that I know that either were asked to provide information or had really good information that they could provide were told basically not to turn up. A lot of subprime lending, a lot of unconscionable conduct by banks. They really limited the amount of information, and really woeful how many people were actually on the record in the Royal Commission.
They've given bad financial advice, put profit ahead of people, rewarded staff for channeling customer funds into the bank's own products. They've denied legitimate insurance claims, rigged interest rate and currency markets, flaunted anti-money laundering legislation and engaged in fee gouging.
Up next, Bass speaks with Damien Liberatore from Niche Living, and they discuss the fluctuating Perth property market and what we can expect in 2019.
I'm here today with Damien Liberatore, and he's from Niche Living, and we're wondering what's the sentiment for the Perth property market in 2019. The year's just begun. Is it on the uptake or is it on the low? Damien, how are you?
Good, thank you. Look, we've found quite a positive sentiment coming into 2019. Reason is there is a lot more positive news out there. Media is publishing a lot more positive and exciting news. We've got a lot of new projects starting up in the mining again. We've got the new resource of lithium, which has created thousands of jobs. BHP has ramped up again, Rio, all these big companies employing a lot of people. Money's coming back in, so people want to buy property. And it's also, bank rates are down, so it's almost cheaper to buy than rent. So, we've had a good start to the year. In fact, we're actually quite busy over the Christmas Eve period as well, and that's led into 2019 as well.
Have you experienced the last couple of years were a little bit quiet?
It wasn't like the boom times as such. However, our product is more in the affordable housing. We sort of appeal to anyone under 450,000. So that market has always been fairly steady. We call it the bread and butter of real estate. So people still need that type of housing. It hasn't been as good as it was, call it 4 years ago, but not as bad as what everyone makes it out to be.
I guess the media and some of the news articles that we see and hear about can sometimes be very doom and gloom.
Yeah, look, I sometimes look at who is writing these articles. Are they property experts? Do they even own property? What involvement do they have property? It's hard. The media, unfortunately, seems to be able to control how the market reacts. Don't believe everything you read. There are some experts out there that do make some good commentary, but sort of look at their credibility and credentials before you sort of make a decision on what they're saying.
What can people that are looking at buying property, whether they're new investors or seasoned investors, look out for, and what are the traps to avoid?
Sure. Yeah. Look, with obviously the market being soft, a lot of the other builders have, I guess, stretched the limit on what they're portraying to the market. So just be wary when you're surfing realestate.com, for example, for a house and land package. Have a look at the fine print, because they advertise a price and then beautiful elevations, interiors, but in fact what you see on that advertisement is totally opposite to what you get. Scroll down a bit further and read the half a page of the disclaimer. It's actually bigger than the ad itself. So just ask all the right questions, contact the rep and challenge them, saying what I see on this website, the picture you've portrayed on there, the specs, what is it exactly going to cost me? And you'll probably find it'll end up costing you $50,000 to $100,000 more than what's advertised.
Well, that is a very important buyers beware sort of message there, because I guess there are people that go out there thinking this is within my budget, to then later find out, no, that was just a base model with base pricing, but the photos were of, the most expensive house display they've got.
Yes, that's correct. And then they find out, they get the final drawings, and they're sort of, hang on, that's not what I asked for, that's not what I thought I was getting. In fact, what's been advertised, you can barely live in it. It's, there's no floor coverings, there's no window treatments, no paints, there's no site works. Some are even advertising buy your house for $99,000, but they don't factor in that you've got to buy the land to build on. So just be very wary.
Tricky marketing. Do you also do renovations and extensions?
Yep. So we do multiple things. So we're a developer, and we develop in infill areas doing house and land packages. We do custom builds, and we also do renovation extensions, second story extension. I guess our edge, if anyone was to ask us, is the opposite of what I've just told you. We've reversed the business model. So with us, what you see is what you get. If we advertise a price and show you a picture, it's exactly to pretty much that cent is what you get. Especially as a first home buyer, you don't want to be moving into your house and then find out you've got to finish it off and do your floor coverings, your painting, your landscaping, because once it's your first mortgage, you don't have any money left to sort of finish those things off. So we've created a product where someone moves in, even your letterbox, clothesline, everything is there. So
when you advertise something as turnkey, it's legitimately turnkey.
Yeah, so when you see turnkey, sometimes it's not turnkey. We're a step above turnkey, so it is everything.
So Damien, what suburbs or areas of Perth is Niche Living looking at in terms of growth areas?
Look, so overall we always look for areas that are infill areas, so well-established suburbs that have been there for 30, 40 years. For example, our current offerings are in Canning Vale, Willetton, Madeley, Hammond Park, so all these areas that are established. So we're looking to expand in those areas or the surrounding areas. So.
Brilliant. Lots of food for thought for the property market. Thank you so much for your time, Damien.
No problem at all. Thank you.
I'm Bess Tadros for Undercurrent.
Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of Undercurrent. We'll be back next week with more Perth stories, so make sure you tune in then. Meanwhile, have an excellent week. I'm Deanna Cooney, your host. Bye.